Welcome everyone, this is Shadow Drake. The topic for this video is going to be the centrifuges and deep miners. Not much to go about them other than the fact that centrifuges are capable of, cleaning dirt reagent mixes and dirty ore and space ore, mind you. And they have different speeds. So let's go over a lot of the nitty-gritty details as we see clearly my way over data setup so that I can help explain things. So first things first, let's talk about RPM because that's honestly why we want to know about them. So the electric centrifuge, 100 RPM is the maximum it can do. Dirty ore speed, space ore speed, reagent mix speed is about 2.75% to 2.8%, and you can kind of see that. It's really hard to calculate that, but that's approximately the number I came about. Now, if you're talking about an ore, like just hand mined ore, biomass, or something like that you just throw in there, that's about 6 times faster, and that's about six. I actually timed that exactly to be. Yeah, I timed that out to be about 16.6%. So yeah, let me see if I can put that in there. Yeah, it's about 16.6%. So yeah, it is about 6 times faster, and this is of course at 100 RPM. So this is kind of like a linear increase in speed. Thankfully, with a recent-ish update, I don't know how long ago it was. I think about 6 months before this video was done. The devs made it so that the centrifuges carry over excess processing speed. So before, if you didn't process exactly 100% on the dots and land on 100%, any extra processing speed was lost, which led to creating centrifuge setups. I believe it was 900 RPM and 450 RPM for the combustion centrifuges. If you got any higher than that, you wasted speed. If you got any lower than that, of course, you haven't quite hit the break point to get to the process one tick faster. Oh, okay, cool. So let me just process some of that out. Get that to pump up. So, combustion centrifuges. O2 fuel. I get about 525 RPM. That seems to be roughly where it seems to cap out at. Depending on the planet's conditions, it could go a little bit lower or a little bit higher, because it completely depends on the fuel temp. I mean, barely depends on the fuel temp, but also the environment as well, because its RPM is based on the temperature it reaches in the chamber. And nitrous fuel will max out at 1200 RPM. I don't know that you'll ever reach that. I don't know that you have to game the fuel a little bit, like feeding some ultra hot fuel that doesn't combust in the pipes but reaches the centrifuge. So it is theoretically possible to hit 1200 RPM, but I think for this centrifuge, yeah, I capped that at 1187, but let's round it up. And so because of that higher RPM speed, you see that O2 fuel is roughly equivalent to 5.25 electric centrifuges, and the nitrous fuel is equivalent to 12 of them. So you get massive increases in speed. But what about fuel consumption, I bet you're wondering. So let me just turn off my fuel pump right here. According to the fuel consumption, it's 0.01 moles times the throttle percentage. So 100 throttle of 100 is 0.01 moles of fuel consumption. 10 throttle will be 0.001 moles, or basically 1 millimole. So there is no increased combustion rate based on how hot or cold your gas is. So it does not matter what your fuel temp is, other than overall speed at the end. Let me turn that back on. So yeah, so far it seems like the combustion centrifuge has a lot of benefits. And then we get even more when we start to talk about how the deep miners do. Now, according to the Stationpedia, deep miners produce dirty ore roughly every 90 seconds. And they produce they either produce 10 or 11 ore. So, I did the math for about 11 ore. Deep miners consume 500 watts of power, so they are power hungry. and I did the rough calculation of how much RPM you need to finish processing a single load of deep miner ore, and it seems you need about 6.11% per tick, or that's equivalent to about 220 RPM. So that already lets you know that you need about 2.2 electric centrifuges per deep miner. And then when you start to factor in how crazy good the combustion centrifuge is as far as RPM goes, now you kind of start to flip that. Now you need 2.38, roughly 2.5 deep miners per O2 fuel combustion centrifuge, and close to 5.5 miners for a combustion centrifuge with nitrous fuel. So you get some pretty amazing speed gains out of that. But let's see. If we're talking about power consumption, now electrics consume about 100 watts, and they are made in the Tier 1 autolathe. So they are basically available right from the get-go. But unfortunately, you still will need a Tier 2 autolathe to get your deep miners. See, deep miners need an autolathe Tier 2, and so once you get to that point, you may as well go for the combustion centrifuge. And that is if you have a readily available fuel source. Speaking about fuel, I said it was 0.01 moles, but if you're going to be using oxygen fuel, that's 3 potato plants. That's all you need. 3 potato plants will produce all the oxygen you need. Now, volatiles, of course, is going to be a different story because you have to be capable of growing the plants. You have to, compost them or grind them and then centrifuge them and dump them in a furnace and reclaim fuel. They're a little bit more complicated on the volatiles front. But as far as the cold worlds go, there really is almost no reason to not go for a combustion centrifuge. And you don't even need a fuel mix. If you've seen the gas fuel generator video I made, you can make a perfect fuel mix with 45 volatiles, 22 oxide. Just stick them inside a portable canister. You got your fuel mix. I would recommend filtering out that nitrogen so that you keep the perfect fuel mix, and that'll basically give you the speed. Now, if we're going to do power comparisons to kind of fill up, perfect your ratios, you're going to be spending 800 watts a tick for one deep miner, plus the roughly 3 electric centrifuges you need to keep up with that. And if you go with combustion centrifuges, well, you clearly see that you roughly double the processing, double the power. However, you are spitting out much more ores because you're using 3 deep miners to feed that one combustion centrifuge. And of course, if you go nitrous, then you really, 2.5 kilowatts of power, but you got 5 deep miners going on. So yeah, there is that. And then of course we get to the reagent storage. Now this is kind of where the timing hits things. The electric centrifuge can only hold 400 reagent ores, and I timed it I did the math. It takes about 14,400 ticks, 120 minutes for an electric centrifuge to process reagent mix deep miner ore. So basically 2 hours to fill up. On the combustion centrifuge, you can kind of see that it takes a little bit longer, roughly another 3,000 seconds. So basically another 60 minutes. So we're approximating about 180 minutes, so 3 hours for a combustion centrifuge to fully fill up with O2 fuel, mind you. If we're going to talk about nitrous centrifuge, that is going to be significantly shorter. It's actually going to be much faster compared to the electrics. So, that's basically that's a rough overview of them. So, electric centrifuges have their draw in that they're simple to make. The fact that you can make them a Tier 1 to autolathe kind of honestly makes me think that they're a little bit more for the oopsies, where you overproduce something and you need to recycle those materials back and then reclaim them back through your electric centrifuge. That's honestly what it feels like to me. But Because I mean, once you go to the tier 2 autolathe, you may as well go combustion if you can make the fuel. Otherwise, electrics will be they're always a good option. But I guess the good thing to know is 220 RPM per deep miner that you need as far as centrifuge speed goes. One little blurb here. Now, ores that you hand mine, the gas-filled ores, they are released into the room regardless of the centrifuge. This is kind of something to remember because if you have a combustion centrifuge or electric centrifuge and you want to clean out the ores of the gas, you better remember that it throws it into the room. See, I still have some leftovers in here, but these are hand mined ores, so if I were to throw in the silver here and then the cobalts, you see that I'm getting that, and once the silver processes, oh, I'm surprised it didn't combust. I expected that to combust. Yeah. Okay, so that was... I'm a little disappointed it didn't combust. Alright, so that was... Oh, let me remove this chip. That's basically the nitty-gritty, and just like the electric centrifuge, when the combustion centrifuge fills up, it automatically spools down so that you can empty it. If you don't let it spool down and try to eject, you're going to build up stress. Headphone warning. It is unhappy. Yeah. Gotta love that sound. Ugh. Okay, so I will talk a little bit more about that, but when the combustion centrifuge, you do something wrong with the fuel mix, or you open it before it stops, the stress goes way up. 100% stress, you basically make it go bad. You basically are treated to that lovely sound, so try not to do that. But while I'm at it here, there is something I need to mention about the combustion centrifuge, and this is going to be extremely important. It does not expel the gases from inside it when it's stopped like this. The only time it does that is when it is fully stressed, it actually starts expelling some of the gases, or if you turn it off. When you turn it off, it actually expels all the hot gases. This is important to know because starting it with hot gases inside it is really, really bad. Really, really bad. I guess we're at that point where I talk about how it kind of does its thing. So, the combustion centrifuge, if we look at this data stuff right here, the temperature inside the combustion centrifuge determines how fast it's going to spool up. The increase in RPM. The total RPM from the centrifuge determines how fast it will decrease. So we basically have two competing factors. So when the centrifuge is hot, it's going to ramp up faster. When it's really high ramped up, it's going to slow down how fast it can ramp up or slow down. If I recall the math, and I perused the Discord for a lot of the math and researched it, its temperature in Kelvin divided by 5,000 multiplied by 12 is approximately how fast it will spool up. If how fast it's speeding up is faster than about 1.2, it's going to build up stress. So if this thing hits 100% stress, you're treated to that awful noise, and you basically it's going to spool itself down really quickly to try to kind of de-stressify. So you really don't want to hit 100% stress. And so that I am mentioning that because when you turn off the centrifuge, it expels all the hot gases in it. Otherwise, it holds them. And this is a problem for the nitrous mix because it actually cannot start up. It will always have a false start. There's too much hot gas in it. It's going to try to ramp up to 1200 RPM as quickly as possible. It's going to stress out in no time flat until you either let all the gases out or let that false start happen, and then it's going to expel some gases, and then the next time you'll be able to start. So, yeah. Anyways, so again, so we have an increase based on the temperature, temperature in Kelvin divided by 5,000 times 12. Then the decrease is based on the total RPM, and I believe that's about 0.99, yeah, 0.99% of the total RPM. That's how fast it's going to decay. So those two will fight each other, and basically the difference between them is approximately what the rate of change will be. And so that's basically how it kind of works in the background. The combustion limiter determines how much combustion is occurring. Up to 75% of the mix in there is instantly combusted. At 0, it's not even 1%. I think it's 0.1%. But it's a math formula. It's not a linear curve. So just know that the higher you go, the more combust, therefore the temperatures will increase, so it can speed up faster. And of course, as far as the throttle goes, 0.01 moles that it's going to suck in times your throttle percentage. So, yeah. To finish explaining my setup, all of this is optional, just so you know. You can start this up without anything. You don't need to know any of this data to start it up. So all you really need to do is have fuel, have it piped up, have it powered, and then you can manually start it up, which that's what we're going to get to. So first, let me clean the pipes. So be right back. Alright, I cleaned up the pipe. So right now the combustion centrifuge is going to start up with normal fuel mix. So I cleaned up its input pipe. It's going to start with normal fuel. I removed the chip because I was working on the logic for it. So let's start it up manually. Now, the thing about starting it up manually is it looks like it'll be crazy, but with normal fuel mix, it is actually fairly simple to start. You don't have to do very much. You can actually just kind of move the setting up and kind of leave it, but we're just going to sit here to watch it. Again, you don't want the stress to hit 100%, but normal fuel is not going to be crazy with it. So typically all you do is set the throttle to 10. So it's going to start ramping itself up. Red light means that it is stressing, green light means it's stopped stressing. And so we're just going to watch it. So you're going to see the total RPM, how fast it's increasing, the total stress, and how fast the stress is increasing. And if you want to keep an eye out here, the temperature and the projected max RPM, and then this is my math for calculating approximately how fast it's going, and the math is about right. And you can see right now, it's not very happy, but you see that the stress is slowly decreasing. Very slowly decreasing. Pretty soon you'll see that, yep, now the stress is decreasing. That's what we want. So you see, you can set a normal oxygen fuel to 10%. You can go do something, and you see that basically the centrifuge will never fully stress out. You can set it, you can leave it, and then you can come back later to do it. Now, if you wanted to speed up the process, you can start bumping up the throttle and limiter. But chances are, if you just set it and leave and come back, you'll come back to a 0% stress centrifuge, and you see it's already pretty fast. Just the 10%, we're already at 240 RPM, so it can keep up with a deep miner. Just as it is by itself right there. And it's still increasing the the RPM a little bit. So let's say you left, you came back. Okay, you see it here. Probably the next recommendation is to probably bump up the limiter. I want to say you can get up to 100. You can go 50 to be safe. I'm gonna do 100 just to see what it'll do. And you can see it's still not really ramping up as fast. But it is ramping up. But same thing. Tell it to go up. You can leave. You can come back. Say you left. You came back. Now you can bump the throttle to 100. You're going to see it's going to start picking up. It's definitely picking up. It's going to start stressing. But you see the stress has already hit its peak and now it's starting to come down. Or the delta is what I mean. You know, the how fast the stress is increasing is coming down. But yeah, oxygen fuel centrifuge, not that hard to start up. See, stress is already caught up. So we can leave it. You can leave it and come back. It's basically ready to go. You can now start throwing deep miner ore, and you leave it to start processing. I mean, you could have started processing at the beginning at all. You know, having stuff inside it is not going to cause it to stress. So you know, you can be rest assured that it's gonna do what it wants to. So let me jump cut. All right, we're back. You see that it's got at least 525 RPM. So you see it's kind of what I mean. It'll be close to that. So that's basically the normal fuel. Now, if you want to do the nitrous fuel, it kind of depends on whether you want to brute force it or kind of make it a little simpler. Back there, I have a fuel setup from my pipes, and right now I have my normal fuel right here. So this is my tank of normal fuel. This is my tank of nitrous fuel. And I have pressure regulators that basically feed the pipe to the combustion centrifuge. Now, I have them set to 20 kilopascals, but you don't really need to go that high. Probably, you know, you just need enough inside the pipe system to feed the centrifuge, you know, 0.01 moles at max. To start up a nitrous-fed combustion centrifuge, the simplest thing to do would be to start with normal fuel and get it up to speed like that. Turn off a pressure regulator that's feeding the fuel pipe, and then swap over to a pressure regulator that has your nitrous fuel. Because when you do that, you're going to start to put nitrous in the mix, and the oxygen will very slowly be cleaned out and be replaced with nitrous. And so what it's going to end up doing is it's going to gradually speed up the combustion centrifuge. Now, because I hot swapped it pretty, you know, when the pressure was pretty different, my stress is building up because of how hot nitrous burns. But if you were to do that, you know, turn on the pressure regulator for the nitrous and then turn off the normal fuel mix, then this setup will basically very slowly ramp it up to 1200. This is probably the least fussiest method for doing that, but it does mean that you're going to be spending an extra 100 watts of power constantly to run this, and if that's a problem for you, we can do it manually, but basically it's going to take this quite some time to fully clean out the oxygen from this mix. And you see I'm already at 20% nitrous. So it's slowly cleaning it out. And once it's fully cleaned out, it'll hit the top speed. But now, if you want to try to start this thing, if you want to start it with nitrous fuel by hand, let me clean out the fuel and I'll show you the brute force method. So, be right back. Alright, now comes the hard part. Starting this up with nitrous fuel mix. So once you've confirmed that your fuel mix is perfectly balanced, just like Thanos says, 50%, 50% volatiles nitrous, the big thing to note is just starting this up, it is going to stress out. You cannot leave this alone. You have got to be actively messing with the throttle and the limiter constantly with this thing. It's at least until it gets stable. You have to do very minute adjustments. You can't just max it out and hope for the best. So really the hard part is starting it, because as soon as you hit the throttle to 10, it's going to be fed some nitrous and it's going to start combusting it, and the temperature is going to be pretty high up there that there's no way this thing can get to a decent enough speed that, you know, the decay rate matches up the temp to keep it from stressing. So what you'll have to do is bump the throttle to 10, remove the throttle, and as soon as you see the RPM is dropping, bump the throttle to 10. The RPM starts increasing, bump it down. And that's basically what you have to keep doing, just kind of cycling it back and forth. Now what I have here is my consoles. This will make this significantly easier. If I see this delta RPM hit negative, I gotta bump the throttle up. Otherwise, positive, decrease. You know, bump it up. Once that goes positive, turn it off. It'll cool itself down, and that's going to allow it to, you know, slowly ramp up, and eventually it's going to catch up with the stress, and you'll be able to leave it at 10. So we'll start this. So remember, 10, turn it off. Watch the RPM. As soon as the RPM starts decreasing, bump it up again. Turn it off. Now I'm watching the RPM. You can watch the console if you want. But this is basically what you have to do to get it to start up. And you can see that the stress is going to be going up when I start it, and going down. Eventually it starts going down as it's ramping up. But you just got to keep doing this until about 200 to 300 RPM. That's about the sweet spot where you can leave it on. But you see, I can leave it on longer now because the stress is pretty low. So let me leave it on for a bit. Maybe let it get stressed for a little bit longer before I shut it down. Or, yep, you know, let it get stressed a bit. Let me just shut it off right here. You don't really want to get too high in the stress. If you start to hit 50% stress while doing this, you are going to have to be a little bit more aggressive about shutting off the throttle. Because after all, the only thing you're concerned about is getting the RPM up. If the RPM starts decreasing, you need throttle. The interesting thing to note, the maximum amount of decay rate for stress is 0.5. And you see, we hit about 250 RPM. That's about the point where you can leave it on at 10% throttle. And now we just gotta wait and let it ramp up. According to my projections, 450 RPM is about where it's gonna stop. You know, maybe once it hits 25%, I'll probably back off on the throttle. If it hits that. Yep, let's back off a bit. I probably could have let it get to 50%, been a little bit more aggressive, but you know, try to prove a concept for this for y'all so that you can get this ramped up. Alright, it's gonna start decreasing soon. Yep, decreasing, go. So now the thing is, it's not all about the speed. The reason why it just suddenly starts dropping like a rock is it needs to see combustion happening inside the centrifuge. And that's what this light is mostly about. It's keeping an eye on to see if there's any volatiles inside the centrifuge. If there's no volatiles, no combustion can happen, and that light will shut off. So, just to kind of show that, I hope it won't stress from that. I might just bump up the... No, let's not go crazy. Now, if it's slowing down too fast, it will also start stressing. Oh, yep, that's quite a lot of stress. I didn't need it to do that. I guess I can't show you the light. Too late for that. Alright, but now we got to the point where it's not gonna stress out much. Let's turn up the limiter a little bit. And it's storming. Ah, storm, stop. Don't need it. So, the limiter is going to cause more combustion to happen. It's going to allow it to get hotter. I want to say try to keep them about the same. Go a little bit extra in the limiter to get a huge boost in combustion energy. If it's at 0, go up. You know. So let's do 10 and 10. Watch the stress. See if it goes up. If the stress starts going up, it might have been a little too aggressive. Let's watch it, wait to see what it does. Nitrous is a very finicky substance. Yeah, you can see that it's bumping up quite a bit. But yeah, if you need to cut back a lot, decrease the limiter. Alright. Stress is going down. Let's increase it back. Yep, going back up. Decrease it back down. Now, however high you want to toe the line on the stress, that's up to you. Me personally, I probably wouldn't want to stay above 50%. You know what? Let's go to 50%. I won't adjust limiters and stuff until 50%. Me personally, again, I'm watching the combustion centrifuge interface that it's saying. If you want to watch the consoles to kind of help see, you know, numerically what's going on, that'll be, you know, it's probably more obvious than the little thing. And you see my stress is already going down. So once it hits 0%, I'm gonna bump them up again. Alright, bump up my limiter and my throttle. Let's see what that does. Alright, stress is increasing. But yeah, man, we're at 3030, and we're already at 680 RPM. We're already doing faster than volatiles. So we're at 3 deep miners right now. Actually, you know what? Let's just... See, the stress is now going down again. The startup is the hard part for the nitrous fuel. As you start getting up in the speed, you can be more aggressive with the throttle and the limiter. I think I'm not gonna get anywhere close to 50% at this point. I think if the stress goes down, yeah, I'm gonna go on ahead and increase it again. If stress is going down, I'll increase it. However much you want to game it. So basically at this point, once you get above 250 RPM, you know, where it's happy, then at that point you can just leave and come back and slowly bump it up. But you can see that this is a lot more hand holding, unlike the oxygen fuel where you can just be 10, then 10, 100, then 100 and 100. Oh, it's decreasing again. Upping it some more. There we go. Meanwhile, it is probably processing those ores pretty quickly. And yep, decrease the percent. $1,000 RPM already. Ah, okay, so 40% you start hearing the little wiggle wobble. Okay. Alright. Let's go to 80. I might actually be good to just crank it up to 100 at this point, but, you know, slow and steady wins the race. It's decreasing already? You know what? 90 and 90. Oh, it's already decreasing? Man. 100 and 100. Yep. Alright. When you got a full 100 and it's not increasing stress, you're good to walk away. And here you're watching that it basically processes 30 ores in either 3 ticks or 4 ticks, showcasing just how fast this is. Ah, there you go, guys. Oh, that's the combustion centrifuge, electric centrifuge. I hope that me showing you how to manually start it up will help you. Again, most of my consoles and displays are way over engineered for this. For starting it up, I relied completely on that square that moves with my mouse. That's what I relied on. But I try to have this available so that you can kind of see when the RPM is dropping, whether my stress is going up or down, and all that fun stuff. And hopefully I covered some useful information in case you want to make your own script for ramping this thing up or down. I believe there's quite a lot of scripts on the workshop. If you really don't want to do that, I personally like to work on my own, so basically my script is using this information to try to slowly ramp it up or down. It's not ready yet. If it is ready, I will make a separate video and just show you what it does. But again, the biggest problem with this combustion centrifuge is, even though, you know, it errors at 3,000 reagents, even though it errors and stops itself nicely, it still has the leftover gas, and that 5,000 Kelvin gas, once it makes it want to be, you know, close to 1,200 RPM. The projected increase for that temp is roughly 12, is basically 12, which means it's gonna basically get like 11.5 stress per tick. It's gonna very quickly stress out to 100, and we don't like hearing that noise. I don't like hearing that noise. I'm sorry I subjected you to it. Anyways, hope this video helped. Hope this if anything, helped you plan out how many deep miners per centrifuge, and hopefully you'll feel confident in making a combustion centrifuge do your work for you. It's centrifuging. Uh, Hope to catch you later. Thank you and have a good day. Bye bye.